During the year of 1888, the district of Whitechapel in London was terrorised by a series of brutal killings. Alright, I'll shut up and cut to the chase. Basically, there was this guy called Jack the Ripper, or at least that's what he was known as. Nobody found out who he was. In the Assassin's Creed version of this timeline, we know who he is, but why is he doing what he's doing? What caused Jack the Ripper? Basically, a detective-like video where we look into why Jack the Ripper goes about killing people. We'll be using what's known, speculation, and logical thinking to figure out the answer. But yes, congratulations if you figured it out already. It's a really simple answer. The man was fucking mental. But let's get into the video and we can expand on this a little bit. Jack was born and raised in the Whitechapel district of London, where he lived with his mother until she was tragically killed by Crawford Starrick's Templars. This tragedy left the young boy severely traumatised, and he was later admitted to Lambeth Asylum, where poor and neglectful treatment only added to his mental instability. However, after the assassination of Crawford Starrick in the year 1868, Jack was liberated from the asylum by Jacob Fry, who later brought the boy into the assassin fold. In 1873, Jack, among other assassin initiates, travelled to India with Jacob Fry, where he learned the Indian Brotherhood's fear tactics. Upon returning to London soon after, Jack began to develop an extremist view of the assassins and their mission. Jack eventually took control of the Rooks gang and began to radicalise its members, killing anybody that Jacob sent to stop him. During the Autumn of Terror, Jack murdered a number of assassins sent to kill him by Jacob Fry. As a result of these killings, Jack began to attract media attention, giving him the alias of Jack the Ripper. So we know how he came to be Jack the Ripper a little bit, though it doesn't quite explain his madness. It explains that he was disturbed before he even met Jacob. In the game as well, in the DLC, it mentions at several points that Jack blames Jacob for his mother's death, which was indirectly caused by Crawford Starrick's control over London. His mother's death being the true cause for his madness in any way whatsoever made him very dangerous, considering that he blamed Jacob for it. He was disturbed enough to be admitted to Lambeth Asylum, so he was already facing some mental issues before he even met Jacob. And considering the neglect he faced at Lambeth Asylum, it must have made him pretty mad by the end of even that. So why did Jacob bring this disturbed boy into the Assassin Brotherhood? Because if he was anything like the other residents at Lambeth Asylum, he must have been pretty much around the bend 300 times over by the time Jacob found him. So Jack was an orphan outside of the asylum, he had nowhere to go, so the Assassin Brotherhood was quite a safe choice. And at the same time, being a child, maybe Jacob thought that he could have saved Jack. However, I do not believe that rigorous training to kill people is a great way to rehabilitate somebody who has a mental instability. But I understand trying to give Jack some sense of belonging, as it would have been the first part of a potential swift recovery. But at the same time, he still would have been unpredictable and it would have been too dangerous. But for some reason, Jacob did it anyway. Making a very unstable boy a very deadly killer definitely played into why Jack decided to go on a killing spree. But taking him across to India to teach him fear tactics as well, which is something the Ripper used no small amount of in the game, considering the boy was probably still a nutcase, was that really the best idea? Well, under Jacob's care, Jack would have seemed fine mentally, because he had the support of his fatherly figure, which was also his mentor, Jacob Fry. But as he approached adulthood as an assassin, he was required to stand on his own 2 feet a bit more. Something that surely reminded him of the loneliness that drove him mad after his mother's death. This may have caused him to develop his extremist view of the assassins and explain his descent into becoming Jack the Ripper. So this explains why Jacob persisted on training Jack, but at the same time how he became a mad show. We also know that Jack overthrew Jacob in the Rooks gang and radicalised its members and then killed all assassins who were sent after him. But that would hardly be narrative justification for Jack somehow hating Jacob and the assassins. I mean, it's enough, but for a storytelling point of view, it's a bit underwhelming. So as I mentioned earlier, it's mentioned in the game several times that Jack blames Jacob somehow for his mother's death. But how is this possible considering that Jack didn't know Jacob at the time? Well, Jack's mother was in fact killed by one of Crawford Starrick's Templars, After being brought into the Brotherhood by Jacob, Jack would have learned about all of this and the things that Crawford Starrick did and pieced things together, and then realised that maybe Jacob could have done something to save his mother. Of course, knowing that Jacob didn't do this and his mother was dead as a result would have caused Jack to have a little bit of resentment towards Jacob, which in his twisted little mind would have been justified. Of course, being a nutcase armed with an assassin's tools and skill, Jack now had all the means to go on his own killing spree and look for revenge, killing all assassins who Jacob sent for him. The most notable assassins that Jack killed were Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, who were all famous Ripper victims. So the events of Jack the Ripper happened because Jacob sent assassins after Jack, which he had to. Because Jack used the rooks that he had radicalised to create a criminal underworld out of Whitechapel. Sooner or later, Jack's killing spree was going to bring Jacob out of hiding, and thus the events of the Jack the Ripper DLC happened. If I were to pin it to one crucial moment, which would have been the decider and whether or not this would have happened, it would have been bringing Jack into the Order. If he stayed out of the Order, he never would have been a trained killer, which would have made him so much less effective, but you don't need to be a trained killer to be a killer. But he certainly never would have had that hatred for Jacob had he not been an assassin, presumably. And presumably he wouldn't have had the means to go on a killing spree. So the chances are that had Jack not been an assassin, he probably wouldn't have been Jack the Ripper. But of course, this major thing, combined with all the little things and the major event that started it all, which was his mother's death, led to Jack becoming a serial killer. And that's what caused the events of the DLC. If you will, that's what caused Jack the Ripper. But there you have it, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share, comment. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. Is there anything that I've missed? And I will see you all very soon.